Chapter 21 Daret. Daret was on the banks of the Nino River, as it had to be to survive. The village was small and wild-looking, without any signs of inhabitants. Eragon and Brom approached it with great caution. Saphira hid close to the town this time. If trouble arose, she would be at their sides within seconds. They rode into Daret, striving to be silent. Brom gripped his sword with his good hand, eyes flashing everywhere. Eragon kept his bow partially drawn as they passed between the silent houses, glancing at each other with apprehension. "This doesn't look good," commented Eragon to Saphira. She did not answer, but he felt her prepare to rush after them. He looked at the ground and was reassured to see fresh footprints of children. But where are they? Brom stiffened as they entered the centre of Daret and found it empty. Wind blew through the desolate town, and dust devils swirled sporadically. Brom wheeled Snowfire about. "Let's get out of here. I don't like the feel of this." He spurred Snowfire into a gallop. Eragon followed him, urging Caddock onward. They advanced only a few strides before wagons toppled out from behind the houses and blocked their way. Caddock snorted and dug in his hooves, sliding to a stop next to Snowfire. A swarthy man hopped over the wagon and planted himself before them, a broadsword slung at his side and drawn bow in his hands. Eragon swung his own bow up and pointed at the stranger, who commanded, "Halt! Put your weapons down. You're surrounded by 60 archers. They'll shoot if you move." As if on cue, a row of men stood up on the roofs of the surrounding houses. "Stay away, Saphira," cried Eragon. "There are too many. If you come, they'll shoot you out of the sky. Stay away." She heard, but he was unsure if she would obey. He prepared to use magic. "I'll have to stop the arrows before they hit me or Brom." "What do you want?" asked Brom calmly. "Why have you come here?" demanded the man. "To buy supplies and hear the news. Nothing more. We're on the way to my cousin's house in Drasleona." "You're armed pretty heavily." "So are you," said Brom. "These are dangerous times." "True." The man looked at them carefully. "I don't think you mean us ill, but we've had too many encounters with Urgles and bandits for me to trust you only on your word. If it doesn't matter what we say, what happens now?" countered Brom. The men on top of the houses had not moved. By their very stillness, Eragon was sure that they were either highly disciplined or frightened for their lives. He hoped it was the latter. "You say that you only want supplies. Would you agree to stay here while we bring what you need, then pay us and leave immediately?" "Yes." "All right," said the man, lowering his bow, though he kept it ready. He waved at one of the archers, who slid to the ground and ran over. "Tell him what you want." Brom recited a short list and then added, "Also, if you have a spare pair of gloves that would fit my nephew, I'd like to buy those too." The archer nodded and ran off. "The name's Trevor," said the man, standing in front of them. "Normally I'd shake your hand, but under the circumstances, I think I'll keep my distance. Tell me, where are you from?" "North," said Brom, "but we haven't lived in any place long enough to call it home. Have the Urgles forced you to take these measures?" "Yes," said Trevor, "and worse fiends. Do you have any news from other towns? We receive word from them rarely, but there have been reports that they are also beleaguered." Brom turned grave. "I wish it wasn't our lot to bring you this tidings. Nearly a fortnight ago we passed through Yazuak and found it pillaged. The villagers had been slaughtered and piled together. We would have tried to give them a decent burial, but 2 Urgles attacked us." Shocked, Trevor stepped back and looked down with tears in his eyes. "Alas, this is indeed a dark day. Still, I don't see how 2 Urgles could have defeated all of Yazuak. The people there were good fighters. Some were my friends." "There were signs that a band of Urgles had ravaged the town," stated Brom. "I think the ones we encountered were deserters." "How large was the company?" Brom fiddled with his saddlebags for a minute. "Large enough to wipe out Yazuak, but small enough to go unnoticed in the countryside. No more than 100, and no less than 50. If I'm not mistaken, either number could prove fatal to you." Trevor wearily agreed. "You should consider leaving," Brom continued. "This area has become far too perilous for anyone to live in peace." "I know, but the people here refuse to consider moving. This is their home, as well as mine, though I've only been here a couple years, and they place its worth above their own lives." Trevor looked at him seriously. "We have repulsed individual Urgles, and that has given the townspeople a confidence far beyond their abilities. I fear that we will all wake up one morning with our throats slashed." The archer hurried out of a house with a pile of goods in his arms. He set them next to the horses, and Brom paid him. As the man left, Brom asked, "Why did they choose you to defend Daret?" Trevor shrugged. "I was in the king's army for some years." Brom dug through the items, handed Eragon a pair of gloves, and packed the rest of the supplies into their saddlebags. Eragon pulled the gloves on, being careful to keep his palm facing down, and flexed his hands. The leather felt good and strong, though it was scarred from use. "Well," said Brom, "as I promised, we will go now." Trevor nodded. "When you enter Drasleona, would you do us this favour? Alert the Empire to our plight and that of the other towns. If word hasn't reached the king by now, it's cause for worry, and if it has, but he has chosen to do nothing, that too is cause for worry. We will carry your message. May your sword stay sharp," said Brom, "and yours." The wagons were pulled out of their way, and they rode from Daret into the trees along the Ninor River. Eragon sent his thoughts to Saphira. "We're on our way back. Everything turned out all right." Her only response was a simmering anger. Brom pulled at his beard. "The Empire is in a worse condition than I had imagined. When the traders visited Carver Hall, they brought reports of unrest, but I never believed that it was this widespread. With all these Urgles around, it seems that the Empire itself is under attack. Yet no troops or soldiers have been sent out. It's as if the king doesn't care to defend his domain." "It is strange," agreed Eragon. Brom ducked under a low-hanging branch. "Did you use any of your powers while we were in Daret?" "There was no reason to." "Wrong," corrected Brom. "You could have sensed Trevor's intentions. Even with my limited abilities, I was able to do that. If the villagers had been bent on killing us, I wouldn't have just sat there. However, I felt there was a reasonable chance of talking our way out of there, which is what I did." "How could I know what Trevor was thinking?" asked Eragon. "Am I supposed to be able to see into people's minds?" "Come now," chided Brom. "You should know the answer to that. You could have only discovered Trevor's purpose in the same way that you could communicate with Kadok or Saphira. The minds of men are not so different from a dragon's or horse's. It's a simple thing to do, but it's a power you must use sparingly and with great caution. A person's mind is his last sanctuary. You must never violate it unless circumstances force you to. The riders had very strict rules regarding this. If they were broken without due cause, the punishment was severe." "And you can do this even though you aren't a rider?" asked Eragon. "As I said before, with the right instruction, anyone can talk with their minds, but with differing amounts of success. Whether it's magic, though, it's hard to tell. Magical abilities will certainly trigger the talent, or becoming linked with a dragon, but I've known plenty who have learned it on their own. Think about it. You can communicate with any sentient being, though the contact may not be very clear. You could spend the entire day listening to a bird's thoughts, or understanding how an earthworm feels during a rainstorm. But I've never found birds very interesting. I suggest starting with a cat. They have unusual personalities." Eragon twisted Kadok's reins in his hands, considering the implications of what Brom had said. "But if I can get into someone's head, doesn't that mean the others can do the same to me? How do I know if someone's prying into my mind? Is there a way to stop that?" "How do I know if Brom can tell what I'm thinking right now?" "Why, yes. Hasn't Saphira ever blocked you from her mind?" "Occasionally," admitted Eragon. "When she took me into the spine, I couldn't talk to her at all. It wasn't that she was ignoring me. I don't think she could even hear me. There were walls around her mind that I couldn't get through." Brom worked on his bandage for a moment, shifting it higher on his arm. "Only a few people can tell if someone is in their mind, and of those, only a handful could stop you from entering. It's a matter of training and of how you think. Because of your magical power, you'll always know if someone is in your mind. Once you do, blocking them is a simple matter of concentrating on one thing to the exclusion of all else. For instance, if you only think about a brick wall, that's all the enemy will find in your mind. However, it takes a huge amount of energy to discipline and block someone for any length of time. If you're distracted by even the slightest thing, your wall will waver and your opponent will slip through the weakness." "How can I learn to do this?" asked Eragon. "There is only one thing for it. Practice, practice, and yet more practice. Picture something in your mind and hold it there, to the exclusion of all else for as long as you can. It is a very advanced ability, and only a handful ever master it," said Brom. "I don't need perfection, just safety. If I can get into someone's mind, can I change how he thinks? Every time I learn something new about magic, I grow more wary of it." When they reached Saphira, she startled them by thrusting her head at them. The horses backstepped nervously. Saphira looked Eragon over carefully and gave a low hiss. Her eyes were flinty. Eragon threw a concerned look at Brom. He had never seen Saphira this angry, then asked, "What's wrong?" "You," she growled. "You are the problem." Eragon frowned and got off Kadok. As soon as his feet touched the ground, Saphira swept his legs out from under him with her tail and pinned him with her talons. "What are you doing?" he yelled, struggling to get up, but she was too strong for him. Brom watched attentively from Snowfire. Saphira swung her head over Eragon until they were eye to eye. He squirmed under her unwavering glare. "You! Every time you leave my sight, you get into trouble. You're like a new hatchling, sticking your nose into everything. And what happens when you stick it into something that bites back? How will you survive then? I cannot help you when I'm miles away. I've stayed hidden so that no one would see me, but no longer. Not when it may cost you your life." "I can understand why you're upset," said Eragon, "but I'm much older than you and can take care of myself. If anything, you're the one who needs to be protected." She snarled and snapped her teeth by his ear. "Do you really believe that?" she asked. "Tomorrow you will ride me, not that pitiful deer animal you call a horse, or else I will carry you in my claws. Are you a dragon rider or not? Don't you care for me?" The question burned in Eragon, and he dropped his gaze. He knew she was right, but he was scared of riding her. Their flights had been the most painful ordeal he had ever endured. "Well?" demanded Brom. "She wants me to ride her tomorrow," said Eragon lamely. Brom considered it with twinkling eyes. Well, you have the saddle. I suppose that if the two of you stay out of sight, it won't be a problem. Saphira switched her gaze to him, then returned to Eragon. But what if you're attacked? Or there's an accident? I won't be able to get there in time, and Saphira pressed harder on his chest, stopping his words. Exactly my point, little one. Brom seemed to hide a smile. It's worth the risk. You need to learn how to ride her anyway. Think about it this way. With you flying ahead and looking at the ground, you'll be able to spot any traps, ambushes, or unwelcome surprises. Eragon looked back at Saphira and said, Okay, I'll do it, but let me up. Give me your word. Is that really necessary? He demanded. She blinked. Very well, I give you my word that I will fly with you tomorrow. Satisfied? I am content. Saphira led him up and with a push of her legs took off. A small shiver ran through Eragon as he watched her twist through the air. Grumbling, he returned to Caddock and followed Brom. It was nearly sundown when they made camp. As usual, Eragon duelled with Brom before dinner. In the midst of the fight, Eragon delivered such a powerful blow that he snapped both of their sticks like twigs. The pieces whistled into the darkness in a cloud of splintered fragments. Brom tossed what remained of his stick into the fire and said, We're done with these. Throw yours in as well. You have learned well, but we've gone as far as we can with branches. There's nothing more you can gain from them. It is time for you to use the blade. He removed Zarok from Eragon's bag and gave it to him. We'll cut each other to ribbons, protested Eragon. Not so. Again, you forget magic, said Brom. He held up his sword and turned it so the firelight glinted off the edge. He put a finger on either side of the blade and focused intensely, deepening the lines on his forehead. For a moment, nothing happened, but then he uttered, Gueloth du Nifir, and a small red spark jumped between his fingers. As it flickered back and forth, he ran his fingers down the length of the sword. Then he twirled it and did the same thing on the other side. The spark vanished the moment his fingers left the metal. Brom held his hand out, palm up, and slashed it with the sword. Eragon jumped forward, but was too slow to stop him. He was astonished when Brom raised his unharmed hand with a smile. What did you do? Asked Eragon. Feel the edge, said Brom. Eragon touched it and felt an invisible surface under his fingers. The barrier was about a quarter-inch wide and very slippery. Now do the same on Zarok, instructed Brom. Your block will be a bit different than mine, but it should accomplish the same thing. He told Eragon how to pronounce the words and coached him through the process. It took Eragon a few tries, but he soon had Zarok's edge protected. Confident, he took his fighting stance. Before they started, Brom admonished, These swords won't cut us, but they can still break bones. I would prefer to avoid that, so don't flail around like you normally do. A blow to the neck could prove fatal. Eragon nodded, then struck out without warning. Sparks flew off his blade, and the clash of metal filled their campsite as Brom parried. The sword felt slow and heavy to Eragon, after fighting with sticks for so long. Unable to move Zarok fast enough, he received a sharp rap on his knee. They both had large welts when they stopped, Eragon more so than Brom. He marvelled that Zarok had not been scratched or dented by the vigorous pounding it had received.